And welcome to this edition of Hidden History Stories from the Secret City. I'm Keith McDaniel, along with my co-host Ray Smith. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Keith. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very well. I got to thinking I think it's maybe our 26th or 27th episode. We've been
Oh
doing
my,
this twice a month for over a year now.
we
So
have it.
yeah,
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 it's become a routine, hasn't it? Every other Saturday we're
yeah.
ready to go.
And it's funny there because when we talked about this originally, we were just going to do an audio podcast, and you were going to just come to my house and we'd record it. And then the pandemic hit, and you had the idea, well, let's just do it on Zoom, and it took
Right.
off. And I think people kind of like it a little bit better, and we just
Yeah.
kept. We'll probably just keep on doing it this way even after the pandemic's over. So
All right. The one thing that's come out of this pandemic that I'm really proud of, and it is good, it's not just Zoom, it's all these virtual tools that are being used now, but Zoom especially is
yeah.
one that I find most popular. I mean, I can go to a Tennessee State Historical Commission meeting sitting right in my library.
That's exactly
I
right.
don't have to drive to Nashville.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Hey, well, you've got some news, Keith, that we need to let people know about. You've been on this path for over a year, probably 2 years now, of losing weight, and you've written a book about it. Tell us
It,
about that.
I have. Well, actually, it's been 5 years. It's been over five
Oh
years
my!
since I decided to lose some weight. And what happened? I think really what instigated this was, and I've lost over 130 pounds and
Wow.
been able to keep it off. And what happened was I got COVID-19 the first 2 weeks of December. And I recovered very well. But I got to thinking, what if I hadn't lost 130 pounds and quit smoking? Um, Started that journey 5 years ago. What would my result of having COVID been? It could have been very different than me just getting over it after a couple of weeks. So I decided to do a couple of things because over the course of the 5 years, I've shared my journey on social media, on Facebook mainly, and I've had a lot of comments and questions about how I did it. So I decided to do two things. First, I was going to start a new podcast, and I did this in January, and it comes out twice a month. It's called My Low Carb Life, and I talk about my journey, my weight loss journey. I offer tips about what I've done and what I've learned. And I usually try to have an expert guest on and interview them about different aspects of health and wellness and nutrition, emotional and mental state and things such as that. So I do that. That's called My Low Carb Life. People can find that if they Google Low Carb Keith. That's kind of my new handle online is Low Carb Keith, and you can find that. And the second thing I decided to do was go a little deeper with that. Unlike you, who's been a published author for years, I've done 16 documentary films over the last 25 years, but I've never written a book, and I always wanted to do that. So I decided to write a book called My Low Carb Life, and it's the subtitle is How I Lost 130 Pounds and Changed My Life. So, so I decided to write a book, and it is almost complete. I'm just polishing it right now. It goes to my editor in about a month, and I plan to publish it by August of this summer. And I'm starting this weekend it's not cheap to publish a book. And so I've decided to start a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo, Indiegogo. You can go there and just Google and just search for My Low Carb Life, and you'll find it. But that's basically to pre-sale copies of the book, so I can raise a little money to have it published. So I'm excited about that. I'm pretty happy with the book. I've had several beta readers that have read it already and have given me feedback about it. And it's basically, it's my story, my background, the things that I've learned along the way, some tips that I can offer. It's not it doesn't contain a specific plan saying this is what you have to do to lose weight. It tells the story of what I did and what I discovered and how I was able to navigate the challenges that came up from losing weight. Uh, and I also end the book with about 50 of my favorite low carb recipes. So
Good.
it's sort of a memoir, self help, and motivational book all in one. So that's what I've been up to the over the winter and the
Yeah.
spring.
Well, that sounds great. I look forward to getting a copy of the book, and I think that's a good thing to do to kind of culminate a journey of. I didn't realize it was 5 years, but
It's over 5. It's 5 years, March the 5th. So
wow,
yeah,
uh, yeah, that's amazing.
yeah.
Well, we had Alan Carr on last week,
Hmm.
and or last episode, and we're going to have him back again. But and I think we're scheduling him for our next episode. We
Hmm.
want him to talk about the Trinity. He's done a lot of research on the first atomic explosion there in the desert of New Mexico,
Hmm.
and he'll talk to us more about Los Alamos and how it compares to Oak Ridge, and we'll have him on again. But we've got an event that's coming up on Tuesday, April the 20th at
Hmm.
7 o'clock in the evening, a tribute to Alvin Weinberg. Now, I've been working for, oh, I don't know how long, time really flies, but
Yeah.
on a steering committee with Ronnie Bogard. Now, Ronnie is Selma Shapiro's daughter,
Hmm.
and Alvin Weinberg donated some papers to the Children's Museum to Selma on the condition that they would be maintained and that they would be made available to the public. And Ronnie's been able to do that, leading the steering committee, and we've actually raised the money and hired a company to scan the documents, had an archivist to
Hmm.
organize the documentation, and we've been able to now make that available online.
Okay.
So what I thought we would do today is we would demonstrate how to get to those archives, that collection of papers,
Hmm.
and we would enjoy some of the things that are in there, just to show people what's available and the ease that you can get to it. So
Okay.
if that's all right, we'll just do a little demonstration here
Sure.
and show people how to gain access to the Alvin Weinberg collection up at the Children's Museum
Okay. Good.
of Oak Ridge. So let me see if I can set this up and share my screen now, and we'll get started. Let's see. I think I can do that and share. Okay, what you do is just at any search engine, just put in the Children's Museum of Oak Ridge and .org and
Uh-huh.
/Weinberg. And once you've got that in your search address, get this out here, then it's connecting. So it's waiting on the Children's Museum. So that comes up. And here you're at that. This brings you to the website, the Children's Museum, but it's the Alvin Weinberg Papers section of the Children's Museum. You're actually at the main page now. There's
Okay.
some things there about Alvin, and you can make a donation to the project, and other things about some photos, things like that. But the interesting part we want to see today is this section that says "We Are Live," and it talks about this technological fixer. This red section down here is a hyperlink.
Uh-huh.
So if we click on it, it'll bring up the Alvin Weinberg archive collection.
Oh.
And it describes what you can do here. You can search, an advanced search, save searches, browse subjects, featured collections, a finding aid, and about us. And the hot links are up at the top. As you can see, I'm scrolling across there. And
Yep.
to show how to get into it, you can go to featured collections, and there you've got collections that have already been grouped for you. Here at the first one, we might go down and just say this graphite reactor, goodbye to the graphite reactor. And notice that it brings up an attachment, and you can click on that attachment. And what that'll do is it'll bring up a document. Now let me make that a little larger so it can be seen easier. And let's see if we can do this.
There we go.
Is that helping?
Yeah, that's good.
All right. And so what this is, it's a 3-page document, as you can see, and it's talking about the event when they closed down the X10 graphite reactor. To another old friend, it says the X10 graphite reactor, the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, without the X10 pile will somehow not be the same. But this is the price of progress. So an interesting part of this, now you could read this whole introduction, or obviously you can download it, make copies of it if you need it, but it's interesting to me on the last page. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. All of us remember, Dick. Now he's talking about the Doan fellow that he's introducing here. Said that the reactor was finished in a short time and operated smoothly. And okay, now right up here, I'd like to pay special tribute. Distinguished administrator sign. All right, so this is an introduction. Now here it is. A week or so ago, just 20 years afterward. Now let's back up just a little bit. Heroic measures such as heating the incoming air with electric heaters commandeered from here and there dried the graphite enough that the reactor went critical without incident. Now keeping that graphite dry was important. If you get moisture and water in that reactor, that will absorb neutrons and it'll make it harder for it to have a reaction. So then history repeated itself. Now this is in 1963 when they're closing the reactor down. Yeah. Says a week or so ago, just 20 years afterward, another inadvertent leak waterlogged our pile and shut it down. You can imagine how much scurrying our operations people did to dry the graphite enough so that the reactor could be running again when the button is finally pushed, shutting down the chain reactor for the last time. So they had some difficulty right there on the end, because they wanted it running when they officially shut it down, not sitting there. So they had to dry that graphite out again. Now, when you get to this point in your research, looking and you found an item that you want, it has put you on a different window. So if you want to go back to where you were, you can close that window out if you're through with it, and then it takes you back to the attachment, and then if you just go back one step, it'll get you right back to where you were. See, we were looking at featured collections number 1. Now we'll go to featured collections number 2. And an interesting one we might look at there is housing in Oak Ridge. Let's take a look. And then again, it'll bring the attachment up. You go up to the attachment, and then it'll load it down. Now, I'm not going to read much of this one, but I want you to get the flavor of this document. Now, it's a letter that was written by a Dr. Jackson Foster. Now, what you're looking, well, let me make it big. What you're looking at now is Alvin Weinberg's response to that letter.
Okay.
Now, I'm gonna read that. I've read your letter several times and have found it most interesting. I can assure you that the problem with which you deal is one which I too consider most important. I think you'll be glad to know that the laboratory has made arrangements with the Atomic Energy Commission to provide housing for research participants, which will be very much more satisfactory than the housing which was available heretofore. Now, that, that was written in 1950. Now, I want to show you what he's responded to. You think about that and you think, well, that's sort of a platitude. I mean, that's not the greatest response in the world, but sure. I want you to see what he's been responding to. Okay. He got this letter. Dr. Weinberg, this is a gripe letter. What I have to say will, I trust, be interpreted by you as an attempt by me using my experiences to convey what appear to be rather generalized reactions on the part of scientific people regarding certain areas of relations in Oak Ridge. Now, purpose is to, and so on and so forth. And then go right down here. I'm not going to read all this, but you get the flavor. I considered an outright insult to me, and I experienced the most bitter indignation at the treatment received relative to housing. Remember, I was invited to come to Oak Ridge, so on and so forth. Well, I was assured of adequate housing, but unfortunately, it never occurred to me before I got to Oak Ridge that you folks meant adequate housing for dogs or pigs.
How funny.
Now, Keith, this thing just keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
And the stupid, pontificating, pompous fools I had to deal with at the Road, not Roan, you don't even know how to spell Roan, Roan Anderson housing offices. Why, it seems as though you people have set out to prove that anybody can be humiliated and made unhappy if the proper steps are taken.
That's funny.
Now, he goes on and just continues beating on Alvin about the housing. Yeah. So now you look at Alvin's response in a little different flavor. I would not have responded exactly like he did. I'd probably use some of those same words back at him.
Yeah, sure, but exactly.
He just said, I found it most interesting. Now, you know that word interesting don't mean anything. You can't tie that down to nothing.
Sure.
But anyway, I got a kick out of that letter.
That's funny.
How Alvin responded to it.
So the collection is just those kinds of things, correspondence and letters and documents and photos.
Yes. That's it. Now, I could go on here into other collections, and we may come back to it if we've got time. But let me point out this finding aid. I think that'll help you to see a little more about how the collection is organized. Well, let me make it large again. And it has a little of the history donated to the Children's Museum and so on. And then a little bit about Weinberg and the scope, how they're arranged, they were collected, so on and so forth. And the archive's been kept in the creator's original order, generally alphabetical. And here's the general files collections. And again, this is set up alphabetically, how you might, and if you take any of these and click on it, it'll take you to that section. Okay. So this is a sort of a quick finding aid. Okay. And let's see. For example, one of my favorite people in Seaboard, in all of the activities about the Manhattan Project, well, I thought I'd find it. Richard Feinberg. Not Feinberg, Feynman. Seaboard.
You know, it's interesting. You talk about Richard Feinberg. I'm a big fan of the Big Bang Theory, and the scientists on the Big Bang Theory, they talk about Richard Feinberg quite often. You know.
Yeah, we're mispronouncing his name. It's Feynman, I think.
Is it Feynman? Okay.
I think it is.
Richard Feynman. Yeah, you're correct. Richard Feynman. There we go. Feynman. right there.
Did you find
You,
it?
yeah, you passed that. Yeah, right there
Yeah,
at the top.
yeah, there. Find them now. And if you click on that,
Hmm.
it's going to take you to an area that shows you the information about Feynman, but it
Hmm.
also has an attachment. You always look for the attachment. That's
Sure.
where you find the document. And what you will find here is a course that he taught on mathematics.
Huh.
Now it gets over our head
Oh yeah.
almost immediately, okay?
Sure.
But here's his letter, an overview that he where he talks about the course that he gave and a report that he gave on it. And then now see there's 30, actually 26 pages, 20
Wow.
looks like 28 pages of his introduction to uh, the course. And
Uh-huh.
then there's a report on the new mathematics. And let's see, 1965.
Uh-huh.
And he really critiques the new mathematics pretty sharply
That
and
that
ends up.
that new math I learned when I was in elementary school. I guess it was.
That's it. And
Yeah.
he winds up saying, there must be a freedom of thought. We do not want to teach just words. Subjects should not be introduced without explaining the purpose or reason. And he said, I don't think it's worthwhile teaching such material if you don't
Oh, how
do
funny.
those. So that's why he was a humorous feller too. I mean, he enjoyed a good joke. He
Uh-huh.
would go. He was a good locksmith. I mean, he could pick locks, and
Uh-huh.
he would open the secret safes in the Los Alamos after people had locked them. He'd go
Uh-huh.
back and unlock.
Is that
He
right?
also, yeah, he found a hole in the fence at Los Alamos, and it was very near a gate. And he would go in that gate, go out the hole, come back, and come in the gate again to see how many times he could do that before the guard would recognize it's the
That's
same
funny.
person coming in all the
That's
time.
funny. Ray, tell us
Oh,
about the event. If there's an online event Tuesday evening,
yeah, there is.
tell us about that. What's that going to
Now,
consist of?
right now that event is going to be a Zoom event, and we published the link in every way that we know how to do it to get it out where people could where people can have access to it. What it's going to consist of, we'll have some. I'll make some opening remarks, and then we're going to have a presentation by Carolyn Krauss
Hmm.
about the early history of Weinberg at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory,
Okay.
and then we'll show a movie clip about Alvin's character and leadership. Then we'll show why Alvin is important to today's reactors. Sid Ball will do a presentation on that. And then Bonnie Carroll is going to talk about his influence on on why the collection is important and his influence on the information age.
Okay.
And then there'll be a short video of doing similar to what I did here, only very short.
Hmm.
Then we'll have Greg Marlin, who will share his stories about Alvin. And then Pat Postma, we'll have a video of Pat, I believe.
Hmm.
And then his son, Richard Weinberg, will be our last presenter. He'll talk about his father, and
Sure.
then we'll wrap it up. So
Sure.
that's the agenda for what we're going to do. And again, we have put that out in a number of places for people to see. Let's see if I can't just quickly find where that would be. We could, let's see, we went to the Children's Museum. Well, maybe the quickest way to get to it is through Facebook. That's your movie. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but
Yeah.
uh, let's go to me
Okay.
and I'll get there in just a second. Just a second. Let's do this. There it is. So this is the flyer that talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the event,
Yeah.
tribute to Alvin Weinberg.
Okay.
And you can get to it get to the link here at this event that's on Facebook.
Sure.
Mhm.
Well, good. And
So
is there a limit to the number of people that can attend?
well, no, I don't think there is. You know, on Zoom, you can have up to 100
Yeah.
without going to a special
Okay.
arrangement with them. So I'm thinking that we can handle up to 100. Here's the
Okay.
link, tinyurl.com, Weinberg 2021.
Okay.
That will get people to the actual event. And
Okay.
it's at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 20th, next Tuesday at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
All right.
Good. 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 Now, you mentioned a while ago that 6 years ago, well, you didn't mention this, but 6 years ago, about this time, um, I made a film, a
Right.
biography of Alvin Weinberg. It's just called Alvin Weinberg, and
Yep.
we had a premiere of it at the. It was produced and funded by the Friends of ORNL, and also by ORNL itself, and we had a premiere at the American Museum of Science and Energy, and showed the film and came out with DVDs, Blu-ray DVDs, and it was posted not long after that by the Oak Ridge National Laboratory on YouTube. And to date, it's had almost 11,000 views on that
Wow.
YouTube channel. Um, so, I thought maybe we could show a couple of 3 minutes of the film, just a little section of it, and share
Right.
with people how they can find it. Um,
Okay.
yeah, if you go I'll just share how you can find it. If you'll go to YouTube and Google um, Alvin Weinberg, you ought to be able to come up to the film. Or you can go to Oak Ridge National Laboratory's YouTube page, and you'll be able to find it there as well. So let me share my screen, and I'll
All
show
right.
just
Let's watch a little bit of it.
yeah, okay. Okay, let me see if I can find it. Uh, I think this is it. All right.
The war was over. The work of creating a laboratory in Oak Ridge solely dedicated to nuclear energy became Alvin and Wigner's mission. They determined that 3 goals were preeminent: establishing a training school, which would teach the elements of technology to a new generation of industrial and naval engineers; designing and constructing a high flux pile as a step toward the development of a breeder reactor; and designing and constructing a small, high temperature, gas cooled reactor. For the next 26 years, Alvin would serve as the research director, associate director, and eventually the director of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Although Alvin's passion was the creation of efficient and safe nuclear reactors, he guided the lab's research on other areas of scientific study as well.
Say the institution is a reflection of a man. The laboratory is a reflection of Alvin. Influenced everything. He wasn't just interested in reactors, he was interested in biology. That was one of his major interests there. And he took a strong role in helping direct and guide the biology program. That was true of anything that came up that he thought was important.
Anything he was asked to do, if he accepted it, he took it seriously. One of his most influential early piece of work was he was an early advocate for scientific information and the problem of the overload of scientific information and the need for computerization of scientific information retrieval. he worked on that for, I think, a summer. And he told me that he became a hero ever after of librarians from that piece of work.
Dr. Weinberg was one of the ones who encouraged people with different capacities, different interests, getting together on a project and really making a difference in the progression of that project, because the people with a different orientation would come with unique ideas from each other, fit them together, and make the project really work well.
He's what I call the ideal kind of scientific leader. He picked people to do a job and gave them, in my case, a division. And as long as you did your job right, I mean, things went well. He never interfered. If you couldn't do your job, you quietly got moved around.
It wasn't that he had some kind of supernatural ability. It was more that he had a combination of sound judgment, enough technical expertise to understand what was important and what wasn't important, and a focus and tenacity, and I guess self-confidence, so that if he saw something that seemed important to him, he would hone in on it and stay with it, and just stay with it.
All right. Let me close that out, if I can figure out how to do that.
Should be up to top.
Yeah. Hold on. Oh, stop share. There we go. Sorry. I couldn't find it. But you know, that film's an hour long. And it's just kind of an overview of his whole life. And you know, so anyway, but that's available online if people want to, after they, you know, go through some, or before or after they go through the documents at the Children's Museum, you know, just to kind of learn a little bit more about him. So.
Right. And Alvin Weinberg is one of the premier scientists. Not only was he at the Chicago Pile with Enrico Fermi, but he also, through that first reactor training school, then Captain Rickover came down and took that school and realized that if he used highly enriched uranium, he could make a nuclear reactor small enough to go in a submarine. And then Alvin was invited to the launch of the Nautilus. So he and Rickover stayed in contact. And by the way, there are letters in that collection that were exchanged between Admiral Rickover and Alvin Weinberg. So he's not only internationally, there was a Weinberg Foundation in Europe. And it may still be there, I don't know. But the other thing is his molten salt reactor is now coming around as a favored approach to building nuclear power reactors, especially in other countries. It seems to be catching on more than just here. So Oak Ridge's preeminent scientist, Alvin Weinberg, to get these papers and documents, photographs, get all of those available to the public, I think is a tremendous achievement and something we should be really proud of. And of course, Tuesday is his birthday. It's his 106th birthday. And we chose that day intentionally to do the tribute. So we hope people will join us on Tuesday. And I enjoyed taking us through the tour today and getting to laugh at some of those letters he had to deal with.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ray. Thanks for doing that. Appreciate it. And like you said at the beginning of the program, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, and we're going to try to have Alan Carr again from Los Alamos to talk about the relationship between Oak Ridge and Los Alamos and some of the history there as well.
Look forward to it.
All right. And folks, thanks for watching. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.